The old monk had carried the lantern through 40 winters. Its brass had dulled to the color of dead leaves, and its glass was scratched like the eyes of a tired man. But the flame inside, that small, trembling tongue of gold, was the most faithful thing Xuan had ever known. It had never once gone out. Every evening, as the mountain temple sank into shadow, Xuan would cup his gnarled hands around the lantern's base and whisper to it. "You are the last light," he would say. "While you burn, the Dharma burns. While you burn, I am not alone." And the lantern, being old and made of metal and wick and oil, had no mouth to answer. But in the silence of its being, it had come to believe a single truth. I am the flame is me, and I must never, ever die. One night, a storm came down from the northern peaks. The wind howled like a hungry ghost, and the temple's paper doors battled as if they wished to flee. Xuan knelt before the altar, the lantern at his side, and he lit a single butter lamp in offering. But the butter lamp was new, and its wick was clumsy. The wind slipped through a crack in the shoji, and, whoosh, the lamp fell, spilling its oil across the wooden floor. In that instant, the lantern's flame shrank. It knew the oil was precious. It knew the wind was cruel, and so it drew itself inward. It pulled its heat away from the glass. It clenched its light into a tight, frightened knot. Xuan looked at the lantern and saw it flicker, then dim. "What is wrong, old friend?" he asked. But the lantern did not answer. It only burned smaller and smaller, a blue bead of terror at the center of its wick. Days passed. The storm passed, but the lantern did not recover. It burned, yes, but weakly, as if ashamed of its own brightness. Xuan would trim the wick, fill the reservoir, polish the glass, but the flame remained a faint, shivering thing. One morning, a young novice named Ling came to the temple. She was thin as a reed and carried no possessions except a begging bowl in a smile that seemed to hold its own sunlight. "Master," she said, bowing, "I have walked 3 days without a lamp. The villages are dark. The people are afraid. May I borrow your lantern to light my way back?" Xuan looked at his lantern, flame now barely the size of a sesame seed. "It is too weak," he said. "It can barely hold itself together. If I give it to you, it will surely die." Ling tilted her head. "Master, has it ever been shared before?" Xuan paused. "No." "Then how do you know it will die?" "Perhaps it has never known what it was for." That night, Xuan sat with the lantern on his lap. He spoke to it, as a father speaks to a frightened child. "All these years," he said, "I have protected you from every puff of air. I have guarded you like a miser guards gold. And in doing so, I have made you small. You were not born to be kept. You were born to be given." The lantern's flame quivered, not from wind, but from something older. It remembered a distant dawn, long before Xuan, when a passing monk had first struck flint against steel and said, "Let this light go where it is needed." The lantern had not understood then. It understood now. At dawn, Xuan placed the lantern in Ling's hands. "Take it," he said, "but promise me one thing." "What, master?" "When you reach the village, do not guard it. Light every lamp you find. Kindle every hearth. If a child comes with a candle, share without hesitation. Even if the flame splits 100 times, give it 100 times more." Ling bowed and left. She walked through the forest, and the lantern, for the first time in decades, swung freely from her staff. It caught the breath of owls. It danced with the wind, and each time the wind threatened, Ling did not cup her hand over the glass. She held the lantern high and said, "Here, take what you need." And the flame grew, not because it fought the wind, but because it offered itself to the wind. It leaned into the breeze. It bent. It bowed. And in that bowing, it found a strange, wild strength. The flame did not hold itself together. It poured itself out, and the more it poured, the brighter it became. By nightfall, Ling reached the village. It was a place of shuttered windows and silent children. Warlords' tax collectors had passed through, taking everything, culting hope. She raised the lantern high. "Come," she called. "Bring your empty lamps. Bring your cold stoves. Bring your frightened hearts." One by one, the villagers emerged. A farmer with a cracked oil lamp. A grandmother with a beeswax candle. A little boy holding a hollow gourd filled with rancid tallow. Ling touched the lantern's flame to each one. Whoosh! The farmer's lamp bloomed. Whoosh! The grandmother's candle steadied. Whoosh! The boy's gourd flared, not with tallow, but with light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. Soon, the whole village glowed, not with a single, hoarded flame, but with 1,000 small ones, each one a mirror of the first. And as Ling looked back at the original lantern, she saw something miraculous. It was not dimmer. It was brighter than it had ever been. Its flame, which had once been a clenched fist, was now an open palm. It flickered with joy. Weeks later, Ling returned to the mountain temple. Chuan sat on the veranda, his face lined with worry. When he saw the lantern, he gasped. Its flame was tall and gold and fearless. It burned, not with the oil he had given it, but with the oil of 100 shared lights, returned to it like gratitude. How? Chuan whispered. Ling set the lantern before him. Master, she said, it was never yours. It was never even itself. A flame is not a thing. It is a passing. It is a handshake between wick and air, between giver and receiver. The moment you tried to own it, you killed it. The moment you let it go, it lived. Chuan looked at his old companion. The lantern seemed to smile in its quiet, metallic way. Then, for the first time in 40 years, Chuan lifted the lantern and carried it not to the altar, but to the temple gate. He opened the door wide. The evening wind rushed in, and the flame, instead of shrinking, leaped toward it like a dog greeting a long-lost master. Go, Chuan said softly. Go where you are needed. Go where you are wanted. And if you burn out tomorrow, know that you have burned well today. The lantern burned on, not because it was guarded, but because it was given. That night, as the stars appeared, the villagers below lit their lamps in unison. And though no one on the mountain could see them, the lantern felt each one, like tiny fingers of light, reaching through the dark, saying, We remember you, we are you. You're still burning. And the lantern at last understood. It had never been a flame. It had been a gift. And gifts do not end when they are given. They begin. The wind as a teacher. The wind was not the enemy. It was what made the flame dance and grow. What winds in your life, challenges, changes, difficult people, have actually made you stronger or more alive?